10 years, the world will be quite different from what it is today. So I think that we think that this is an opportunity here. That's why we continue, Your Excellencies, to assist Africa and to generate ideas that can assist our continent to think about how we move forward and make sure that Africa comes out the best, better, and transformed out of these events, but we don't fall under them. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, let me close my remarks by just recalling one of the many statements that were made by Salim Ahmed Salim, and this one was at the Africa Development Forum, which was organized by the ECA in March 2022, in March 2002, when he said, and I quote, "The causes and consequences of conflict and instability in Africa do have a significant linkage with global developments and relations in the international arena. The construction for peace and security in Africa, therefore, calls for more improved linkages with global structures and mechanisms, particularly the United Nations Security Council, the linkages that exist between our continent and the world. As we deliberate on global challenges and the impact of our continent, Excellencies, let us ponder how to use Africa's increasingly important voice in the global arena, including in the G20 and United Nations, to better shape a world that will foster peace, security, and economic development for our current and future generations. The content of our final outcome, or the document that we will put together here, we hope positively will influence our continental leadership and allow for a common position on how Africa should confront these global challenges. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellency Professor Maloka, for this very inspiring statement, which I will not take the risk to summarize, but I think in my notes I highlighted two things. You really provided to this meeting a conceptual background to the topic that we are going to discuss, and you challenged the participants to think, discuss, and propose concrete responses, suggestions to, actually I would say, to propose African responses or African solutions to the world's problems. Thank you so much, Professor, for this inspiring speech. We will move to the second speaker, who is Ambassador Glapo, representing Dr. Vasu, founder and executive director of APRM. The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Pastor Ranching, I see the way you look at me, you are surprised and still alive. I am. I'll always defy that. Thank you very much, Program Director. As correctly stated, my name is Willie Denklapo. I was the first ambassador to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the OEU in 1995. So a bit of understanding of what happened or what was happening at the time, up to the point where there was a transformation from the OEU to the AU. We were given that burden and responsibility to chart this thing. But let me also, Eddie before me, acknowledge all the dignitaries that have been mentioned here by our program director and others that, of course, will not be mentioned, but I think all of you I say that also as a South African, that welcome to South Africa at a very interesting moment in our lives, in fulfilling one of the commitments that reflects the very values and principles that are enshrined and which inspired the peer review mechanism and all the direction that we took at the time. Correctly so, the reference to what happened in 1990, that declaration, this declaration in that summit is something that we always have to recall and remember. Indeed, we were forced to respond. We had to respond. But we have to look at the state of the continent at that moment, how the continent was organized, the challenges that it was faced with, and the composition of the heads of states. I think it would be brave to say that. But look at the decision that came out of there and the response that was there and the commitments that were made, even by those who could have been affected by the opposite of what put them there. We had many people in uniform. We came through the coups, we know what happened post-independence and what started happening in 1990 when those commitments were made. Commitment, democracy to conform to what the new world order was being shaped by what was happening in Europe. And I hope we're not going to find ourselves in the same trap. Because in conformity with that new world order, we find ourselves at a very difficult situation where the OAU had to sit and as a continent to begin to respond to our challenges and say, where are we, who are we, where are we going? And I think that that responsibility was dutifully exercised. But of course, the biggest challenge is, and which is what is facing us today, still the response. Until when are we going to find ourselves responding to what is happening in Europe? The world cannot continue to be changing simply because of the changes that we are seeing are taking place in the world when we're actually talking about what is happening in Europe. These are challenges that we are facing now, the challenges that we are facing then. How did you respond? What did you do? One of the changes that for me, which is what we are celebrating today, at that summit that was recognizing these changes, if you look at the declaration, was an acknowledgement of one of the challenges that was facing the OAU at the time, a big change that was possibly coming. And today we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of that change. Because in February that year, all the liberation movements were unbanned. Some of the people who were in prison were released. For us, it was a fundamental change in terms of the pressures that Clegg was faced with and had to respond to. So we are a product of what was happening in the world, what was happening in this continent, and we became part of those processes. And when we were admitted to the OAU, that is the commitment that Mandela made. That never again will South Africa be discussed in the context of a problem facing the continent, but part of a country that will contribute towards the solutions that we are confronted with. And I think we tried our best and we have to continue to do so. But in order to do so, we have to do the right thing here. And we have that opportunity next week. Some of us as South Africans. So I'm saying the timing, as far as for us as Accord is concerned, is that Accord was born around the same time. For the same reason, to respond to the challenges that we're faced with in these countries and the global challenges and the challenges of the continent. And from 1993, Accord started to have that association with the Organization of African Unity and continued with the AU, and that's why we are part of these processes, because it's also about our history. As Accord, it is tied out to the history of South Africa that was infected upon, like all of us at that particular time. So I wish all of us a very fruitful discussion, but also to convey the greetings from Vasu, which is where I should have started, because he's in Dar es Salaam. There is a commemoration seminar kind of thing that is taking place to reflect on what we are doing here, but in particular focusing on the 20th anniversary of the Peace and Security Council, to be able to reflect on where we are in terms of creating peace and stability on this continent. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best of luck. And thank you,
where things were shaped, maybe in absence or against it. But today, Africa has an opportunity to contribute to the shaping of the world it finds itself in. Thank you, Ambassador, for this powerful statement. We will move to the next statement from Dr. Jane Mufumadi, Chief Executive Officer of Freedom Park. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Program Director. Professor Edimaluka, the Ambassador Tlapo, Professor Mathole Motshekga, Your Excellency Mama Baleka Mbete, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I stand on the protocol as articulated by the Program Director. On behalf of Freedom Park, it is my great honor also to convey our word of welcome to you, especially to this important gathering that is taking place on the eve of Africa Day, as we celebrate Africa's break with our colonial past. We believe we must take stock of the progress that we have made, the accomplishments, and the challenges encountered. And we do this so that we determine measures that we must take to overcome the obstacles lying on the path to the total emancipation of the continent. At Freedom Park, we talk about the emancipation of the African voice. And we believe that unless our voices are totally emancipated, where we are able to articulate who we are, where we come from, and where we want to go as Africa, then we are not completely free. And we also see Africa's struggle for liberation as part of the age-old story of humanity's quest for freedom that goes back many millennia to the very origin of mankind. Our triumph over colonialism was yet another testament to the unquenchable thirst of humankind for freedom and justice. Our place as African in this continent is also anchored in our rich heritage and traditions. The philosophy of Ubuntu, the belief that we exist for each other. I am because we are. I am because I belong. It's not only the foundation of our socio-political systems, culture, and way of life, but it is also that filament that runs through and provides a framework for our engagements in global matters. For it is only through genuine recognition of the humanities of others, through respect and appreciation of diversity, that we can reach more sustainable solutions to national, continental, and global challenges. While these values lie at the center of our being, we still must constantly remind ourselves of these basic tenets of our philosophical origins, of our heritage and spirituality. Now and then we engage in fast-changing world. Our continent is increasingly confronted with formidable challenges that threaten to inhibit our further advancements. It is our ability, I believe, to tap in our rich heritage, our rootedness in tradition that gives us the necessary confidence to engage effectively with the rest of the world, and to do this on an equal footing. This approach has already been demonstrated in the engagements of African leaders seeking solutions and resolutions to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Africa and many within the continent has taken a bold and principled position in relation to the ongoing genocide and war of crimes being perpetrated against the people of Palestine. And we believe that we who have experienced the brutality of colonialism, apartheid, and racism cannot stand by and watch while others are being denied their humanity. South Africa recently commemorated only 30 years for our freedom and democracy. We're sitting here with many who are still carrying the pain. So watching what is happening brings back the memories, the pain that we have suffered, and impacts on our progress towards healing. Hence the determination to work and support others as others have supported us. And as South Africa in particular, we cannot forget that our own victory over apartheid benefited immensely from the principal support we received from the rest of Africa and the rest of progressive mankind the world over. Hence, this determination. Most of you sitting here have contributed, and had it not been because of your contribution, South Africa will probably not be free today. And hence, you have taught us and led us to know and believe that when others are suffering, we must stand up and support each other. It is for this reason that Freedom Park, which was designed by Nelson Mandela as a shrine to honor those who sacrificed their lives so that we can be free, has not only memorialized and inscribed the names of South Africans, but for the continent over, for the many nationals who suffered for our freedom. And we know through Freedom Park that our freedom was not free. We don't preserve these memories so that we harbor the spirit of anger and revenge. We preserve these memories so that we draw lessons from the mistakes of the past to build a better continent. And we do this to celebrate the triumph of the human spirit. And today, as we celebrate Africa Day, we would like to register our appreciation, Prof. Motshekga, for the sterling work that the organs of AU, particularly of course APRM, Accord, and the African Continental Free Trade and many other organs have done these noble ideals, and we believe these organs are all the building blocks for the Africa we want. And we wish also to add our voice in welcoming you, and we're looking forward to listening to your reflections on where we need to take Africa. I thank you.
Comes forward. Let's give him a round of applause.
Program Director, Professor A.D. Maluka, Ambassador Tlhaka, on behalf of the President of the Pan-African Parliament, His Excellency President Chief Fortune Jamhuri, I chose to reflect on the unfinished business of the struggle of the African people for freedom and independence in the context of the fundamental changes taking place in the world. First and foremost, I focus on the historical injustices which were perpetrated against indigenous African peoples by the slave trade, imperialism, and colonialism. Secondly, I focus on trade and their impact on Ethiopian or Sudanic states of medieval Europe, Africa. Thirdly, I focus on the struggle for the African soul. And lastly, African spirituality and its relevance to resolving the challenges that faces. Let me say that there were struggles for the soul of Africa between the Roman Christian West and Islam, and which led to the birth of Arab states in North Africa. The victory of Western Christianity, or of Islam over Western Christianity, and the suppression of Karaism, which is African spirituality, led to the collaboration of Europeans and Arabs in the enslavement of indigenous African people. The negative role of Christianity and Islam in the slave trade sometimes makes us forget the positive role of religion in the rebirth of Africa. In particular, the recognition of the African religion. Now, it is the Kenyan scholar Mathole and Nelson Mandela who recognize the triple African heritage of Christianity, Islam, and African religion in the quest for the African Renaissance, that is the rebirth, renewal, and of the African continent. What is African religion? I think it is important that we look at African religion because as President Seretse Khama, Nelson Mandela, and including Xi Jinping said that a nation must have a soul. Now, if a nation does not have a soul, there can be no stability in such a nation. And this is true of Africa today. There is instability throughout the continent. There have been coups. We wanted to silence the guns. The guns are not silenced. Although Africans don't produce even a bullet, Africans do not produce guns. Why are African countries unstable? I want to submit that it is because African countries have lost the soul. And Nelson Mandela in 1997 recognized the importance of the soul of a nation when he addressed the Center for African and Oriental Studies at Oxford University. Mandela said that the triple heritage, African heritage of Christianity, Islam, and African religion can play a major role in the African Renaissance, that is the rebirth, renewal, and development of the continent. But he set one condition. The condition was that Christianity and Islam on the one side must be tolerant on African religion on the other side. And he went on to say, African religion is no longer a superstition that must be replaced by other religions. He highlighted in particular the central tenet of African religion, which is African humanism, Ubuntu, which says, I am because we are, and I am through others. But Mandela also recognized that African monarchs, both kings and queens, African spiritual and traditional healers, are the custodians of African humanism. But today in Africa, the African monarchs, African spiritual leaders, African traditional healers have relegated to the back, and therefore we have relegated to the back the custodians of the soul of the African continent and its inherent ethical and moral values. We shouldn't be surprised, therefore, that everybody is complaining about corrupt African leaders, deepening moral degeneration and social ills such as xenophobia, gender-based violence, femicide, racism, and so on. Now, therefore, I want to submit that there is one moral tenet that unites the world, regardless of their religions and ideologies, and that is the philosophy of Ubuntu, African humanism, which even the Pope in Rome endorsed, President Obama endorsed, and the whole world accepts that African humanism. Now, I want to propose that there is a need to recover the soul of this continent, and that Ubuntu is unifying. It transcends religion, tribe, race, and so on. Why can't we recommend to the leadership of this continent that now is the time for us to go back to this philosophy which knows no boundaries, so that we can bring peace to our world. If you look at what is happening in the continent today, you have Boko Haram in West Africa, you have El Shabaab in East Africa, you have ISIS in Mozambique, and which means that there is a kind of a new scramble for the soul of Africa. Now we can talk politics and talk politics, but there are some invisible forces that are arming innocent African people to kill one another. And what are these killings going to leave this continent? I am not a prophet, but I think that if this goes on, in the next 50 years, there will be no African unity, there will be no African freedom. So I think, therefore, that there is a need to engage with this new phenomenon which threatens the stability of Africa. I want to, as I conclude, Program Director, say that on the 9th of this month, as part of the Africa Month celebration, there was a dialogue on renewal, cleansing, on renewal, healing, and cleansing at the Freedom Park. Everybody said that the problems that we see on the continent, the chaos that we have seen in the Pan-African Parliament, and the chaos that we have seen in the South African Parliament are as a result of the loss of the spirit, the soul of the African people. And it was proposed that we need a cleansing ceremony, because after gaining freedom, we inherited colonial structures, statues, and everything. But there was no attempt to cleanse what the colonialists left behind. For instance, I used to like President Mugabe when he said that the statue of Cecil John Rhodes must be removed from Zimbabwe, because he is buried at a holy shrine of the Zimbabwean people. And some traditional healers at the Freedom Park told us that there will never be stability in Southern Africa because of the remains of Cecil John Rhodes in Zimbabwe. And another observation is that the crisis in the South African Parliament also results from the fact that in the presidential office in Cape Town, Cecil John Rhodes left a bed, Zimbabwe bed, which he used to worship, whereas he was telling African people to worship Jesus. So he took away our spirituality and replaced it with a distorted Christian doctrine, and we have problems. So as Africans, I think that we really need to think afresh, and that's why we welcome the launch yesterday of the African Spiritual Renaissance Movement, because it's only the spiritual renaissance that can restore the soul of the African people, I think.
I think several regions and kingdoms in Africa were not afraid of change, and they were always trying to regroup so that they can work together for governance and also for the welfare of their people and also for economic development. And we know that even what we call SADC today actually were started by the kings in Botswana, Lesotho, and Rosalind to work together. And then later they engaged and united to confront and share ideas. How are they going to react to the colonialism that was coming? So in short, I want to say Africa, right from the beginning, has never been afraid of change, and governance has been all there with the participation of men and women, particularly men and women who were wise than the older ones. So one difference is that they were not afraid of Europe, and their main reference point was not always Europe. First of all, it was Africa, and they were working for the whole of Africa eventually to unite. They did participate in European war in the kindness that if there is injustice anywhere in the world, they must participate. So, moderator, I just want to say, as we are deliberating on global governance and development, let us not only start during the colonial era or the decolonization process. Let's just look at ourselves. What happens before? Change always was happening. Governance was always there. Development and trade was there. And we know that from the West African experience, actually the inter-country trade was started by women. But then when the African Union came to trade, they did not consult the expertise of women in West Africa who have always done cross-border trading, because they knew that there was one Africa and the borders were artificial. So that was my main contribution to say let's not just start at colonialism or decolonization as our history, which our able Professor Maloka gave us very, very useful history, which many young people don't know. So we take note of that. But let's go further and look at what happened before and learn lessons from Africa. We do have a tendency to start today. We cannot solve problems if we don't know the foundation and if we don't know the history. And may I conclude by saying, Viva l'Afrique and happy Africa Freedom Day. Thank you.
Excellency Amar Hajar, representative of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Community Abroad and chairperson of the APRM Committee of Focal Persons. Vous êtes le bienvenu.
Mesdames et messieurs, honorables invités, le protocole observé. Bonjour. En ce jour marquant l'année 2024, nous célébrons les jalons historiques de l'Afrique. Ces anniversaires résonnent comme autant de symboles de résilience, de progrès et d'espoir, et les grandes étapes de notre voyage en tant que continent. Les 60 ans d'existence de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine, les 25 ans de métamorphose de l'Union africaine et les 30 ans de libération de l'Afrique du Sud, ultime et dernier pays des continents à se libérer des chaînes du colonialisme, sans oublier bien sûr le Sahara occidental que nous considérons comme dernière colonie en Afrique, dans la quête de notre autonomie et de notre progrès. C'est dans ce tourbillon de changement du leader panafricaniste plutôt, imminent, ont visionné et façonné un avenir meilleur pour notre continent. Leur voix, leur action et leur engagement continuent de résonner à travers les âges, nous rappelant notre devoir et notre potentiel en tant qu'Africains. Parmi ces géants d'hier figurent des hommes et des femmes qui ont incarné l'esprit panafricaniste, tels que Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Julius Nyerere, Ahmed Ben Bella, Jamal Abdel Nasser et bien d'autres, qui ont porté haut les aspirations de notre continent pour l'autonomie et la dignité. Leur vision audacieuse, leur détermination inébranlable, et leur sacrifice désintéressé restent une source d'inspiration et un rappel constant de notre capacité à dépasser les défis, à construire un avenir meilleur pour tous les enfants de l'Afrique. De plus, l'Algérie, par son histoire et son engagement, a joué un rôle central dans la lutte pour l'indépendance et l'unité africaine. Son soutien au mouvement de libération, sa contribution à la création de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine et son engagement en faveur de la paix et la stabilité en Afrique ont marqué son empreinte indélébiles dans l'histoire panafricaine. L'Algérie continue plutôt aujourd'hui d'apporter son soutien constant et déterminant aux luttes des peuples africains pour leur indépendance. Je veux évoquer ici, dans ce contexte de ce pays panafricaniste d'Afrique du Sud, le soutien constant de l'Algérie à la lutte des peuples du Sahara occidental pour son autodétermination et son indépendance. L'évolution de l'unité africaine vers l'Union africaine s'est avérée être une réponse prophétique aux mutations mondiales qui ont redessiné la géopolitique et l'économie mondiale. Cette transformation visait à doter notre organisation d'une nouvelle vigueur, de capacités renforcées pour s'adapter aux exigences d'une ère marquée par des défis et des opportunités sans précédent, tant national qu'international. Alors que le monde évolue vers un nouvel ordre multipolaire, l'Afrique se tient à un carrefour crucial de son destin. Nous assistons à des bouleversements d'une ampleur inédite à l'avènement d'un nouvel ordre mondial émergent dicté par la multipolarité. Au cœur de ces mutations se pose la question cruciale du rôle de Global South, du Sud global, dans la construction de cet ordre mondial du XXe siècle. Ces changements systémiques ne sont pas des anomalies passagères, mais témoignent d'une évolution constante de l'histoire humaine. La fin de la guerre froide, dans les années 90, a été le prélude d'une transformation majeure. Il est temps présent révèle une transition tout aussi significative. En ruminant sur l'histoire, rappelons-nous le sommet de juillet 90, où le secrétaire général de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine de l'époque, M. Salim Ahmed Salim, orchestrait une rencontre mémorable. Cette réunion a donné naissance à la déclaration de la conférence des chefs d'État et de gouvernement de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine sur la situation politique et socio-économique en Afrique et les changements fondamentaux en cours dans le monde. Les réflexions de ce sommet ont été nourries par le rapport éclairant de M. Salim Ahmed Salim, s'intitulant, rapport du secrétaire général sur les changements fondamentaux qui se produisent dans le monde et leurs conséquences pour l'Afrique. Proposition pour une position africaine. Ensemble, unis par l'héritage de nos anciens, embrassant l'avenir avec optimisme et détermination. En avant, vers un avenir où l'Afrique prospère, où la solidarité et l'unité sont nos guides, où le rêve panafricain devient une réalité éclatante. Avec sagesse et vision, saluons les héritages du passé et engageons-nous pleinement dans la construction d'un avenir rayonnant pour l'Afrique. En s'appuyant sur ces fondations solides, unies et déterminées, relevant les défis, exploitant les opportunités et inscrivant notre continent dans les annales des destinées glorieuses. En tant que gardien de notre histoire et architecte de notre destinée, forgeons un avenir de l'Afrique, brille de sa propre lumière, où l'unité, la prospérité et la dignité sont le socle de notre édifice commun. Que nos actions résonnent dans les échos de l'histoire, que nos pas et actions brillent comme des phares dans les ténèbres de l'incertitude. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Puisque les casques sont encore dans les oreilles, je pense que je vais continuer un peu en français pour remercier M. Amar pour
by the United States since the fall of the Soviet Union, and the world as well as the United States. Now we're seeing indications of that it may change. I mean, there are all these emerging powers that are coming and giving an impression that we might be going the multipolar system, the multipolar route. We've seen countries like Turkey, Brazil, China, and all of that coming up in the world, and also playing a role that cannot be ignored anymore. That they have to be acknowledged that their players in this world. So, as I said, we are witnessing a changing world. Are we going to a multipolar world? I don't know. But indications are that we're going that route, that we're going to a multipolar world, which a lot of people have always been wanting, that the world will be safer when it is multipolar and move away from the unipolarity. I think we need to be concerned about two issues in that kind of a world. The first one is, how is this world evolving? And the second one is, are we ready to engage with this evolving world, and get this evolution to also be influenced
by us and how we understand it to be. I think we need to have a discourse in that regard on how do we want to see this polarity if it is coming, that we must be part of the evolution and not be part, not to be onlooked as in the past. It is critical that we acknowledge that in the recent past, since the 90s, the unilateral economic and political sanctions have surged fourfold compared to the 1990s. So, which is now, it's a weapon of choice, the sanction, a weapon that is not governed rules by any rules, but governed by whoever has the power to dispense of it. That also global capital flows are showing signs of fragmentation marked by increased currency swaps and a growing trend towards de-dollarization. Well, I'm even afraid to mention this word de-dollarization because people can kill you when you mention it because they see the decrease of the power of the most dominant economy, that it is going to be decreasing more and more, that we are getting big economies to de-dollarize, then it means lesser and lesser influence and lesser power. And institutions that have been regarded as pillars of the world system are losing credibility day by day. United Nations Security Council, we've had Pakistan, Palestine. United Security Council as it is constituted has not been successful in dealing with the issue of Palestine. Not at all. And in also other issues on that seems to the credibility of our main international institution that is responsible for peace and security. That if it cannot deliver peace and security to the world and protect the citizens of the world, then that means that there's a difficulty in that institution that the world has to look at and see how we can resolve it. And of course, not only the UN Security Council that is losing credibility, but a number of institutions that we've seen that they are losing credibility, they are not able to implement anything and all of that. And that then it means the world being more dangerous than it is. Also, we are characterized by conflicts and the mother wars. I won't go into that part. The speakers that were here spoke about the conflicts and rumors of war and all of that. And I think we should, of importance, we should begin to define for ourselves as the continent of Africa. How do we understand multipolarism? How do we understand it? I've seen in the literature that is there a number of definitions. People understanding it this way and people understanding it that way and all that. But I'm not aware that there is a common understanding in the continent of how do we understand multipolarism so that we can carve for ourselves a role to play in evolving this world. One of the first things that is quite important, the African Union adopted what they call the consensus on the reform of the United Security Council. Since then, there has not been a movement, even in negotiations in New York or anywhere. No movement. Because the people with veto do not want to see the change, do not want to see the democratization of the Security Council. That's a plain fact. That the reason why we're not getting anywhere is because the veto yielding countries don't want the change. Maybe not all of them, but in different degrees they don't want. They don't want the change. They are satisfied with this. What do we do? What does the president do? I'm not sure whether when there's a committee of heads of state of the African Union that deals with this. And I'm not sure whether we have ever seen a report that says that there is a movement, in this regard. We have been stuck and we have been stuck, and the situation is getting even worse internationally. I also think that we being fortunate to be in the non-aligned movement, that it gives us an opportunity of engaging with other members of the non-aligned movement who are outside the continent on how we can collaborate together going forward, how we can collaborate together growing this understanding and the vision, the kind of a new world that we want. And that I think AU has been admitted as a full member of the G20. I think that's a big achievement. I think this is the kind of thing that we want. The same principle that we were saying that we did in the United Nations Security Council. That's the kind of thing that we want. So that we become an equal player with everybody around the room, so that we co-manage the development of the economy of the world. Because our economies are part of the world economy. And being in the G20, it gives us the possibility of doing that. And as I'm saying, and I think a proliferation of other institutions and other international organizations that are coming up that are giving us an alternative that says we want to concentrate on development. Everything resource that we have, we want it to go for development. Organizations like BRICS, which seems to be getting traction within the continent and all of that. So we are going to see more and more of that happening. I think as we move on, we should also focus on putting our house in order. I think we need to be addressing 3 key challenges confronted by countries in the continent. One, peace. Yesterday and day before yesterday, we spoke a lot about that. And then there's a question of security and development. And I need for me to say that even our continental program, it tries to focus on that, on the kind of Africa we want. Agenda 2063 talks about the Africa we want, which is focusing on peace, security, and development. And Professor Motshekga had said I should not go beyond 3 minutes, but please forgive me, I'm about to finish. And we are also witnessing the power of technology through, amongst others, the Internet of Things. I don't know whether Sister you know what is Internet of Things. I was told by young people yesterday that it is something called Internet of Things. So maybe the young people will come and interpret to us what is the Internet of Things. And artificial intelligence. Now, these I think, are the other areas that we need to be looking at. How are we going to manage artificial intelligence? Is it going to be a free-for-all, or is it going to be regulated? And if it is not regulated, what are the consequences? Are the regulation only going to be domestic, or we're going to be talking about continental management of it? I don't know. But these are some of the things that we were talking about. Like last night when they showed us Eddie Maluka as an artificial intelligence creation, if they didn't say so, we would have bought it that it is Eddie Maluka. And you can see how dangerous that is for that capacity if it is not well looked after. It can do anything that it wants. Now, are we sufficiently organized to create a conducive atmosphere for our young people to develop in that direction, and also to see to it that it doesn't get abused or misused. And I just want to say to the young people that it's your time, or it is your time now. And I don't think we are saying be more moderate or anything, but there's nothing wrong with being radical young people, as we were also radical young people, in order to take the world forward. And I'm impressed to see in this room that there are quite a number of young people, which is very, very, very encouraging. Thank you very much.
And person who would like to reflect on the various interventions. So, and yeah, so 2 is fine. So we'll go to His Excellency Mr. Alain Akoula.
Merci pour la parole. Je vais réagir à l'allocution du professeur Mathole Motshekga sur la spiritualité. Ce qu'il a décrit m'a véritablement touché. Je viens du Congo Brazzaville. Et dans mon pays, à l'époque coloniale, il y avait un homme qui s'appelait Simon Kibaron, qui s'était, disons, présenté comme étant un prophète et qui prêchait la libération de l'Afrique du peuple noir, en s'appuyant sur le combat de Tchipavita, qui était la reine du royaume du Congo, qui allait jusqu'au Angola et qui a été brûlée par les Portugais. Donc, résistance du royaume du Congo à l'envahisseur portugais. C'était à la fois une résistance, certes militaire, mais surtout également spirituelle. Donc, le kimanisme, sous la colonisation, a été interdit. Le kimanisme ne priait pas. Et l'un des endroits où on priait de façon clandestine était la parcelle de ma grand-mère. Donc, c'est dire qu'il y a un lien entre identité politique, identité spirituelle. Et pour finir, l'hymne de l'Afrique du Sud, je trouve incroyable. Cet hymne est joué par le kimanisme au cours des séances de prêche, de prière. C'est un hymne qui est joué par le kimanisme. Et donc, la première fois que j'ai entendu l'hymne sud-africain quand j'étais encore très jeune, j'ai trouvé incroyable que cet hymne soit également joué dans une religion nouvellement. Donc, je m'arrête là. J'espère avoir l'occasion de pouvoir échanger avec vous de manière beaucoup plus interactive. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Excellence. Et la deuxième intervention sera faite par notre ami qui vient de l'Université de Pretoria. Présentez-vous, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you. My name is Mathole Motshekga from University of Pretoria. The point I want to make is concerning what Professor Mathole Motshekga spoke about the soul and how African nations either do not have souls or they are losing them. And to me, I have 2 points there. How do we ensure that either one, the African nations that do not have souls are doing soul searching? And number 2, how do we do now the cleansing? Because you clearly stated that because we lack souls as African nations, that's why we have chaos, we have all these killings and the coups. And how do we ensure that we do proper soul searching, but at the same time manage the cleansing? Because it seems that the trend is that we are soulless Africa, which is not a good thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Honorable Professor, you have those three questions. The floor is yours.
So that as a public representative, we go down to our people and educate them against manipulation by imperialist and neo-colonial forces, because our people are not sufficiently educated, because there are wars for centuries, say in the Eastern DRC, West Africa. Now people come and take advantage of their poverty and hunger. They arm them against their own people. So we need Pan-African interfaith education on the continent. We need to skill our people so that they don't depend on being soldiers. So I think, therefore, that as Mandela put it, the Reconstruction and Development Program, RDP of the soul on the continent, is necessary. And if we can make a recommendation to the AU that the Pan-African interfaith movement and the African spiritual renaissance should be accredited by the AU and be popularized throughout the continent. Only education can liberate our people. We can't have the whole continent, the youth of the whole continent, becoming soldiers to fight wars of invisible forces that has no respect and love for the African people. So that would be the solution.
Thank you very much, Professor. Ambassador Inonji, you have the floor.
The family is disintegrated, the grandmothers are separated from the children. Let us all endeavor to raise African children in the African sense. And I'm not saying everything African is perfect and good, but we definitely have things to offer to the world. The value for humanity that we want to. I am an example. My grandfather participated in supporting ANC 1912. My father headed the African National Congress in Northern Rhodesia. So I was raised by Africans who value Africans, who showed me what was positive in the African system, and also who showed me what was negative. If we just bring these children in Lusaka, Johannesburg, in these slum areas, there is no coverage, there is no love, there is no leadership, there is no demonstration of the positive African. Institutions are great, but let's start in the homes. Let's raise African children. And I always encourage young people, where is your village? Where are your grandparents? Even books have been written, start there. We cannot start at institutions. They don't touch the heart, but the family touches the heart. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see another request for intervention from Her Excellency Mr. Rita.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I can't resist also, I guess, as a not so young, a word on the subject, especially because the sense of what is important in life is fast disappearing, being replaced by what we see on TV and the 4IR world and new reality as we were. In fact, Ambassador Jinga was referring to it, which is a reality. It is good, and we've got to actually learn from our younger people in our families. But as we grow old and leave this earth, let that which is valuable in African traditions, African communities, African reality, and the values we actually got and were raised on by the generation of the people, the grandparents and the parents of the ambassador Inonge, my sister Mwanika, was referring to. That must be left for future generations, younger generations who are taking the world forward to always hold on to, because it is their strength. It is that which will see them through a difficult future ahead. And we can see in the world that it's not all glorious, but let us value Ubuntu. It is Ubuntu that sustained me in difficult times in politics. When in recent times I watched when an old man from a political background I don't belong to passed, and the whole country was remembering all the bad associated with that politician. I remember times when I had lived as a neighbor of this person, and political imperative was telling me never talk to him, never have anything to do with him. But it was Ubuntu that sustained my relationship with that elder, whom I respected as an elder according to the Ubuntu teachings, as I was brought up on that menu. And I think it's a menu that will always sustain African people, including African young people, into the future. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I think this.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Thank you. You did a very good job. It's going to be very difficult to follow all these steps. Excellencies, Madam Ambassador Luanika, the chair of the APRM panel of eminent persons, Madam Baregambete, Mama, thank you so much. You're welcome in our midst. We're very happy to see you here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Bagan Mathole. I'm here to simply introduce the next moderator for the session, which is titled High Level Panel on Shifts in Global Governance. This session is going to look into political transformations that the world is witnessing right now. We will also explore the global economic trends and crises associated with these global changes. It will also, while at it, engage security and societal concerns arising from the fundamental changes that are taking place right now. To lead us through this session is a lady who is an experienced business person. She is very, very instrumental in leading change and transformation journeys for various organizations. She has vast experience in broadcasting. Currently, she is news anchor, or let me say anchor for CNBC Africa. She wears many, many hats. I'm not going to be able to go through them all in one breath. Her name is Zanele Morrison. Madam, please, the stage.